Is Danica the real deal? Hey, who won the fight between Elon Musk and the New York Times? And did Volkswagen just introduce the coolest car, or what?
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone. Your journey, our passion.
Peter, how you doing, man?
John, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. And we got two other galoots with us tonight. Frank Marcus from, let's get this straight now.
Motor Trend.
There, good.
Brands, Motor Trend, Motor Trend Classic, Motor Trend Online.
Right. And Gary Vasilash from Automotive Design and Production.
John,
Great having you back.
Welcome,
Peter.
Gary.
Frank.
Fresh from a Jeep drive in Austin, Texas.
But I can't say anything about it until
It's like it didn't even happen.
But you
didn't
can say
happen.
something about the Circuit of the Americas.
Circuit of the Americas is magnificent. It was the most amazing racetrack. I mean, just if you just saw this,
Yeah.
and I was wondering, remember they were going to build the Large Hadron Super Collider somewhere in the middle of Texas?
Right.
I think maybe they took that land and said, let's turn this into a racetrack.
Right.
I mean, architecturally, it's just beyond words. I
And
mean,
it's
they
one of the few
really
places
did
where
a
you
great
walk
job.
up and you know they spent $400 million. And
Oh, yeah?
you can
It
see
shows.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
So you were driving the new Jeep Grand Cherokee SRT8 and the diesel version, and you can't talk about
I
it?
can't talk about it.
Because it's embargoed.
It is embargoed.
Dang, I wanted to, because I got to ask what you guys think about this Volkswagen two-seater XL1 super high fuel economy car. And I thought we'd tie that into your
So do you
diesel
think
drive.
if it doesn't get 261 miles per gallon, that people will be disappointed? Or was it?
267?
Yeah, you know, like if it's only 260,
Yeah.
we'd be all upset and just start like saying.
You know, the green movement is quite sophisticated in Germany. I mean, so this is
Well, you know, that's a
right
good question
at-
because the European drive cycle is really easy breezy.
ridiculous.
It's, you know, you can take a car here and a car there and run them through the Euro test and the EPA
Over here,
test.
we say your mileage may differ. Over there, they can say your mileage will be a whole hell of a lot less, no matter what.
Right.
And yeah, so are they going to? Did they announce it coming here, or just that they're going to build it?
All they announced is that they're going to
Because
build
it's
it.
hard for me to imagine that thing flying over here. 12 seconds, something like that, 0 to 62. It's got to be, what, 40, 50 grand with that hand-laid-up carbon fiber and so forth?
At that price, they'll lose money on every one. And this is Dr. Piak's personal project.
Du jour.
Yeah. and
Well,
now-
not too sure because they've been working on this, I want to say,
years.
going back
Oh, right.
before
Sure.
2000.
The most recent of his windmill tiltings.
Originally, it
Well, this
was
is the third version, right? This
yeah, third version.
of this car.
The first version was sequential seating,
Tandem seating.
in motorcycle speak. And he and Piesichreiter drove to some board of directors meeting, Volkswagen, that was in Berlin.
Right.
And it was a big deal because they filled up the tank and drove I don't know how many miles.
Well, that was always, they had that challenge of 100 kilometers per liter. That was the thing that all the German makers were trying to hit, and that was the first that
It was called a 1 liter car back then.
Right.
But you know, if Piak wants to do it, that's going to be done.
It's going to get done. Right. And the 1 liter referred to consuming 1 liter of fuel for every 100 kilometers.
Right.
And irrespective of any sort of business case making any sense or
no.
anything like that. No, I just my will be done.
But I mean, I consider it the Porsche 918 of the fuel efficient cars that they've. I mean, this thing is
It looks awesome.
carbon, aluminum, this, that. I mean, it's like a little race car, and they'll lose money on it. Who knows what they're going to charge?
It does look way better than the tandem one because now the proportions are the normal width, and it does have that, beautiful sort of reinterpretation of the Volkswagen face scrunched down. I mean, it's really good looking.
Do we have it? Did we have?
Yeah,
it?
Ben, do you got a picture of that? Well, they'll work on it. Or
But I
maybe
mean,
somebody in the chat room can call it up.
but the thing that they're doing that I think is,
Oh, here it is. Here it is on the screen now.
is clever, they're putting it in a plant in Germany where they're building series production cars. I mean, so the plant will have capacity to build things. It isn't like they're setting up a special facility to do this, which is a positive for it.
It's pretty cool.
It's not clear how
But
many.
it's an exotic.
It is.
It's a high mileage exotic, is what it is.
It's a green exotic.
It's a new category of cars, really.
But
one that I don't anticipate catching on huge in this country.
No, it's a category of one.
Well, look at it. To me, silhouette-wise, it's very similar to the original Honda Insight.
Exactly.
Sales-wise, that thing went nowhere either. And maybe I'm thinking about it looking like the Insight, original Insight, because it's got those
Covered
rear wheel
yeah.
covers.
Bearings
Exactly
back there
right.
that
And you'll notice, too, what was that Subaru sort of sports sedan that did not have roll-down windows?
Yeah.
SVX.
SVX, thank you, Frank. So this has got the same thing, fixed windows and just something down so maybe you can stick your hand out and wave at
Pay for the toll
booth.
yeah.
No, because I don't think that low you're going to be able to reach up to the toll booth.
flick a cigarette ash.
Right. But it is cool. And, to your guys' point, this is, you said the third generation, Gary?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they've been working on this and working on this and working on it. I'm sure every time he said, no, come back with a business plan that works, which means come back with a business plan where we only lose millions, not billions.
And I think part of it, though, is, I mean, this being a composite-intensive vehicle, that Volkswagen is looking at what BMW is doing in terms of the iCars and using an extensive composite application there. And they're saying, we've got to have an understanding of this technology, so we will also be able to deploy it, but even deploy it perhaps even at a greater volume than they're doing.
Well, it's going to have to translate to greater volume with these fuel economy standards. I mean,
I'd still love to know how they calculated the fuel economy on this, because I don't know, what kind of a drop-off could we expect from going from the Euro driving cycle to the EPA?
Huge. I mean, there's no conversion, but that one has so little hard driving. I mean, since they revised EPA in 2008, there are these other tests that are thrown in there that are more aggressive, air conditioning on and all that, so that ours is closer to something reality-based. Europe is just ridiculously pie in the sky. So,
what do y'all make of this big argument between Elon Musk and the New York Times, which did a review of his Tesla S and said, hey, this thing just doesn't have the juice to get through like Tesla's saying it does?
I don't really care about the fight. I think the bottom line is electric cars and cold weather just don't go together. I don't really care which side the argument goes, but that's a fact.
I was amused because, I drove a car from L.A. to Vegas, and after that trip, we learned that the folks were back at Mission Control watching our every inch of that. And they were,
at Tesla.
Tesla, they knew exactly how much power we had and all that stuff. So when I saw that, I'm like, yeah, I know. If he says he did loops in a parking lot, he did loops in the parking lot. So I read, Elon's thing. I'm like, well, he's got him dead to rights. He knows what happened. Bad for that dude. And then you read the guy's, his response. Oh, gee, that sounds reasonable too. And of course, it's always a bad idea because the press buys the ink by the barrel. They're going to get the last word. So it's kind of ballsy to stick himself out there and pick a fight like that. But
well, what was interesting is that the New York Times public editor, the one who is their watchdog, did a piece on that to say, okay, I'm going to draw some conclusions. And the conclusion she drew was, well, we're both a little not right. But the thing that I thought was most interesting is that in her piece, she ran an extensive portion of a letter that she'd received from an owner of a Tesla S. And there was one paragraph in there which just hit home immediately, because the owners of the Tesla, writing to the New York Times about this, said if he would have only spent 30 minutes to an hour reading the owner's manual, he would have understood what was necessary. And I was thinking, okay, how many of us, when we get a test car, read the owner's manual?
Nobody does. They're 350 pages long.
Right. Or even look at the owner's manual unless there's something we don't know how to
like this on the dash, of course.
Unless there's something we don't know how to do, we're not going to read that, right?
No.
So here's this guy who, I'm betting he didn't read the owner's manual.
I have been known to read an entire S-Class manual before my one-day drive with the car. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Well, Frank,
The exception proves the
Because, I mean,
rule.
those cars have so much stuff on them that you're not going to figure out just by futzing around. So,
But I think Peter hit on one of the key points. You get out in cold weather, and I'm talking in my own experience. If you get down to 25 degrees, boy, the range drops off 40% in my experience.
Yeah.
I'm talking having done this with the Leaf and the Volt. Boom, 40% drop off. And then the other thing that I add is they said, oh, well, he was driving 70 miles an hour. Excuse me?
That's
the
the speed.
speed limit, man. And that's only where I start looking at what's going on.
yeah, although, yes, in town, I think the range does drop off like you're talking about because it's short trips and stuff. If you're just getting in the car and heading out of town, just using the car brings the batteries up to normal temperature. And I don't think you would find, if you were just trying to do that, let's drive up the corridor or whatever, that it would be 40% reduced. It would be somewhat less when you first start off, the energy to warm everything up and whatever definitely sucks some range away, but I don't think it would be 40%.
Well, there's another theory that charging station didn't work, the one that he was using, and that it was faulty. And some people are saying that was the
I
thing.
mean, if you want to buy a Model S, hey, that's why we live in this country. You can go buy whatever you want, drive
right.
whatever you want.
That's right.
And that's more power to you. But let's face it. I mean, even in hot weather, when you run air conditioning in a Volt or any of those cars, I mean, you can watch the charge go down. So, I mean,
The thing is, the car is not for people who drive 7 hours out of town every day or every week or frequently. It's for rich dudes who drive around town, then they drive to the airport and fly where they're going to go, and they fly back to the airport, and they drive back home, and they continue driving to work and a few little places. That's how rich people, when they buy $100,000 cars, I think that's how they largely use their car, and it's pretty well suited to that.
Yeah, I think they've come out with a terrific car. I'm not knocking the car at all. I'd love to drive it. I still haven't done that yet. Haven't had a chance to. But my point is, if electric cars really only work like they're supposed to in warm weather, and as I'm saying, if driving 70 miles an hour is all of a sudden a bad thing to do. And same goes with the hybrids. I'm told, well, you were driving 70. Of course it can't get the fuel economy label. It's like, well, then I don't want these cars.
I think you're going to find that 180 miles is a reasonable thing at 70 miles an hour with air conditioning on, if it's not 120 degrees outside. I think you're going to find that it is a pretty reasonable range and far greater than any other electric car out there. So to me, I'm still, I still stand behind Motor Trend's Car of the Year assessment of that car.
that's
I accept
right.
that. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, it got a lot of those, though, this year, didn't it?
What?
you're just a
sure.
Model S kind of guy.
Okay, Tesla expects to sell 20,000 of those cars this year, so here we are.
They're not going to have time to make them, I don't think, at the rate they're going.
Well, they said they're building, 400 a week. So that's probably on track to get to 20,000. But
Are they selling for 100?
well, no, they're not. Not yet. But the key for them is now going to be they've got to get more dealerships. And
how is the franchise thing going to go for them?
The franchise thing is fighting it tooth and nail.
State by state.
Yeah, so far I think there's only been one case that's been adjudicated in Massachusetts, and Tesla won. And my prediction is they're going to win the vast majority of these cases. I don't think...
Having no established dealer network to dismantle, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, apparently Tesla has 32 global outlets, and it hopes to go to 52 this year. So
Oh, there you go.
get lined up now, Peter. I know you're anxious.
Yeah,
It drives as well as an M5, I'm telling you.
that's good.
Acceleration, cornering, all that stuff. Their first car
I know.
they've ever designed.
Well, don't forget, all the key people behind making the car work were all ex-Detroit guys.
Exactly. The whole Ford GT team doing the chassis,
Well, wasn't the chassis designed here in the Detroit area?
Wherever they did it, I don't know, but it was a lot of the same
That place
people.
in Auburn Hills or something
Yeah,
like
let's
that.
face it, the people who made the thing work dynamically were Detroit automotive people.
They hired the right guy.
Designed by a
But the
former
Franks-
GM guy, Franz.
Yeah, Franz. But to your point, Frank, To go from 0 to Motor Trend Car of the Year with your first effort is unprecedented.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really impressive. Really impressive.
And anyone thinks
counting the
that we got some kind of bags of cash, let me just tell you right now, those guys don't have any spare cash for that kind of crap, okay?
So it sounds cool, and I will go and purchase a Z01 engine and yank the batteries out and put the Z01 in it with a 7-speed
Fisker rides again with that very idea, doesn't
Bob
it?
Lutz is doing it.
Well, you get the ZL1. I'll get the XL1 engine, that 800cc 2-cylinder diesel Volkswagen's got, and put it in there.
Now,
You better leave some batteries then.
I don't mind supporting the U.S. petroleum industry.
Speaking of electric cars, what about this situation of Fisker may be purchased by a Chinese company?
Yeah.
And that just...
It's Geely, right?
As
is
Deion
looking at-
Sanders says, that ain't right, man.
Well, they reckon since they bought the battery company that was selling the batteries, they might as well have the car that's going to buy the batteries.
Well, I mean,
Matter of the-
A123,
There's
which
a little
is the-
matter of the check that they wrote to Fisker that aren't some Congress people are raising their hands.
Oh, yeah, no,
Right.
they are. But, you know, the choices, and this is what happened with A123 is, you know, if the Chinese don't step up and buy it, it's just going to go out of business. You may as well let them buy it.
But it seems somewhat curious to me that, so to the point of Fisker and A123, that both of these companies had serious support from the U.S. government to get where they were going. I mean, you know, A123, I mean, you know, some guys at MIT came up with the idea, and, you know, and then it was turned into a going concern, and, you know, you got a lot of backing. And so we develop the technology and then sell it to a different country so they can sell it back to us. I mean, isn't this a whole problem with, you know, what we've discovered in terms of the auto industry and many other industries? I mean, TV sets. I mean, do we make TV sets anymore?
No.
Didn't we invent the TV set?
There is a local company.
Yeah, a local company is assembling them. But, you know, and this gets us off on a whole different discussion, but that's why I say, I think, personally, opinion, it's fine for the government to put all kinds of money into research. Absolutely. You know, goose the system, get it going. But do not give money to companies for their operations. That's crazy. If they can't put a business plan together and raise the money, then there's no business for the government to get involved in that. Research, you betcha. And spend billions at it while you're at it. But don't give money to companies to run their operations. Bad move.
Just glad we didn't lose Tang.
That's pretty good, Gary. Peter, what do you make of Danica Patrick winning the pole at Daytona? And is this what NASCAR needs?
Well, yeah, some of my readers were openly saying she got the call. And for those listeners or viewers out there who don't know what the call is, that's referred to the famous incident in NASCAR on the 4th of July, and I forget when Ronald Reagan was visiting the Firecracker 400, and Richard Petty, who hadn't won in several years, all of a sudden is running up front and wins the race for his 200th win. That was referred to as getting the call. So some of my readers suggested Danica got the call. No, I don't think so. Is it advantageous for NASCAR promotion-wise? Oh, yeah, absolutely. But she's driving a frontline car, a Tony Stewart car with Hendrick Motors. It's a frontline car. She can drive, by the way. She can wheel a car, especially on an oval.
She weighs less than the boys.
Yeah, and she knows how to get around in qualifying. And so that's one specific achievement. And it's a historic achievement. The race, totally different thing. And in the dual 125s today, she wisely just dropped back and finished the race because if she had crashed or something, then she has to start at the back. So she retains her pole position. But I don't think she got the call. I think she's driving a good piece of equipment, and she knows how to wheel it around. Again, in the draft, new cars, in the race, it's a whole different thing.
Plus, just to corroborate what you're saying there, at one point in qualifying, the three teammates, her, Tony Stewart, and Ryan Newman, were, I believe, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
and she was just barely ahead of them.
Yeah,
so.
and Jeff Gordon came along and almost knocked her off.
Right.
But
With a Hendrick engine.
And cool that the cars finally look a little something more like what you buy on Monday. I mean, so all these things together, maybe we're trying to nibble back a little of that lost attendance.
Yeah, NASCAR's taking credit for that, but as we discussed earlier, it was the top people at Ford and GM who put NASCAR in a headlock and said, you will change these cars or we are going to revisit our budgets. And they finally got the message, and now they're taking credit for it, whatever. They look better. Cars look better. The race today was boring, but, these dual 125s, I think, have outlived their usefulness. I think it's just really bad. I think it's just, everyone drives around fairly cautiously, and then a few people are racing to try to make the cut. And I don't know. The races today were boring.
But isn't this all part of their need to have an entire week build up to the race on Sunday?
Oh, of course.
And you can see how, the Indy 500 has become less than what it once was when the entire month of May was a build up to that race.
Yeah, well, it was a different time, a different era. NASCAR is struggling right now, and it's the most glaring thing was the last championship race when Brad Keselowski won, which was a great story. The TV numbers were down. They had this all-star race, the Sprint Unlimited. We used to be the Budweiser Shootout, and you could shoot a gun off and not hit anybody in the stands. There might have been, I don't know how many, 20,000 if that. So NASCAR, they're struggling right now. They're trying to get their mojo back, and it's not coming back that easily.
No, it's not. And, this Danica thing is the one breath of fresh air they've had that the whole country's talking about NASCAR again. But it's only talking about Danica, not about the rest of it.
Right. Yeah, well, if she runs well, if she stays out of trouble, she's got a top 10, top 5 car. But that's when all the old veterans come to the fore the last 5 laps. So we'll see.
Yeah. Hey, let's take a quick break right now and bring Charlie Hughes on the show. So, Ben, let's give a shout out to our friends at Bridgestone. Charlie Hughes, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. How are you doing?
Doing really good here.
Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Peter.
How you been?
Oh, terrific.
Good.
So, Charlie, tell the audience a little bit about your background. I've been promoting you this week as having run Land Rover North America, but I know there's more that you did than just that.
Well, I think probably one of the most important things, John, was my start in the industry as a mechanic's assistant at Reader's Digest. And I was sorry to see them going to bankruptcy for the second time. I thought they were a pretty good outfit when I was 16.
But where else have you worked in? What other car companies?
Well, I started working for General Motors at Cadillac out of graduate school. And after about 3.5 years of doing that and realizing not only did I not have any responsibility, but nobody 10 years older than I had any responsibility, I decided to do something unheard of and went to work for American Motors. They were quite shocked. But American Motors was in sort of that bloom period when Dick Teague and a bunch of other people were doing some brilliant stuff, and that was a terrific experience. You were actually at any age expected to contribute something to their betterment, and it was a lot of fun. Even got to run a pro rally car for a season. Wow. And I always like to laugh that I built the car with these 2 hands and I destroyed it with those 2 hands. So, but went from there to work for Doyle Dane Bernbach in New York City when they had both the Porsche Audi and the Volkswagen accounts. And that was, as Peter will always remind me, that kind of job is more fun than should be legal. It was just, I dealt with more, I'll say genius people, but creative people who were tremendous fun to be around. You just sort of got lost in the whole experience. Then went to work for Fiat during what we thought for years was their last hurrah.
That's where Charlie and I met.
Was that Fiat?
Yep. Good old Montvale, New Jersey. I was in charge of marketing operations for Fiat and Launch, and then eventually got tapped when they took over Ferrari to do some of the marketing planning for that. And I was working for Dick Recchia, who most of you I think know, and he's a very creative, high energy guy. And when the people I had been calling on at Volkswagen asked me to be the head of marketing for Porsche Audi, but I tend to be a loyalist. But I was out having lunch with David E. Davis Jr. and I was asking him for a little advice. And I said, well, David, I don't know what I should be doing here. And, I really like working for Dick and Fiat, et cetera, but I've been offered this job at Porsche Audi. And David turns to me and he says, now, I just want to get this straight. They've offered you the job. We're not talking about interviewing. I said, yeah, they offered me the job. He said, is the money okay? And I said, well, I'd use the word okay, but he said, okay, so it's okay. He said, all right, we are not leaving this restaurant till you call them up and accept the job. And I said, what? And he said, you are out of your mind. I'm not letting you out of this restaurant. So I excused myself to the men's room and called my wife. And I said, what am I supposed to do? And she said, I'd accept the job. Let him pick up the check.
There you go.
So was head of marketing for Porsche Audi for a couple of years. By the way, I was interested in the conversation earlier about PIEC, and we can come back to that in terms of branding. But as you recall, the history of Porsche in I believe it was 1972, Ferry Porsche decided to kick the whole family out of the company, and PIEC was an incredible engineer at that time. I think he had created their Wonderkind race car at that point in time.
Yeah, he had done a lot of the famous race cars, including the 908-3, which was his personal development all the way, and the 917. And I mean, the guy was smoking hot in his day.
Yeah.
He's the real deal. But the point I'd make about PIEC is I got to know him when he was working on the Quattro. And in fact, it's nothing I usually brag about, but I managed to destroy a Quattro prototype worth $250,000 in a field in Germany, proving that the car could fly over 165 feet when you were taking off at 100 miles an hour. The guy said, Audi, very kind. They said, well, you're representing the United States. You now know that the car's a safe car. That evening, my boss fired me, but he later got told by the Porsche folks that would not be a smart thing to do. So, but working with him then, we were looking at bringing in a Quattro that at that point was only rated at 156 horsepower and was not much fun to drive. And so we did a test drive, and we were meeting Jim Fuller, who was head of the division at the time. We were meeting with PIEC and 11 of their engine engineers, and he said, look, you've heard the customer, this 156 is not enough horsepower. And the head engineer said, Herr PIEC, we can't get up to the 180 horsepower they want, not even if we give up our summer vacation. At which point the other 10 engineers looked at their shoes saying, what in the world did you say that for? And PIEC said, well, then it's clear. You have no summer vacation. And you got to measure the power of this man. And it leads me to another point about branding, which we'll get back to. But isn't it interesting that the fastest growing, strongest brands in the world today are basically run by autocrats, which is certainly, I think, a fair description of PIEC. In any event, did that for a couple of years, then got promoted to be the head of marketing for Volkswagen as it was going into another slide. Then they were moving the Volkswagen sales and marketing back to Detroit, and I decided I really didn't want to go back to Detroit at that point. And they put me as a regional manager because I had to do that before I could be a divisional manager. And I was there when the lads at Land Rover decided they wanted to bring the Range Rover finally to the United States. And I won that beauty contest. They wanted an American to run it because they said the number of successful introductions of a British car in the United States led by a Brit stood at 0. So they felt they were increasing their odds if they had an American. And that was probably one of the great opportunities of certainly my lifetime. But took that company from 0 sales to 1 billion sales in a little under 14 years. And we had a great time doing it. Then the call of the dot bomb era caught me up, and myself and my chief financial officer, after we left Land Rover, started a company called carbuzz.com. Still a great idea that fell afoul of the tech stock bubble burst. And then Ford asked me to help them turn around Mazda in North America, which I did. Did that for a little less than 3 years. That was during the Zoom period. And then after that, I've been a consultant.
Hey, go back to what you said earlier, that all the best branding efforts right now are run by autocrats. Who besides Pitt would you throw on that list?
Oh, well, when I say branding efforts, I don't mean branding efforts like they are darling brand managers. But to build a great brand, you really need clear vision as to where you're going, and you need to be kind of meaner than a junkyard dog to get there. And I'll give you an example. I did consulting for Hyundai and Kia in Korea, and I worked in their marketing planning group. I'd go over there for a week each quarter, and the marketing planning group was filled with some of the brightest young men and women I've ever worked with, who had been educated in some of the best schools all over the world. But they told me a story about the fact that in 1999, when Chung took over, he was in a meeting with some of the top officers there, and he simply said to them, here's the deal. In the next 5 years, we will have better quality than Toyota. And I have to tell you, I've worked in a lot of companies where everybody in that room would have walked out and started laughing and asking what he had been smoking. But you know, they knew the measure of the man, that he was serious and he was going to make this happen. And so people didn't go out and debate the point. People went out and made it happen. And so, but on that list of brands, John, I would say certainly Hyundai and Kia would be on there. I would also put, I know he's a controversial person in Peter's eye, but I'd put Marchione. I think that he has a very clear understanding of what brands can do and where they need to be. But more importantly than that, it's damn the torpedoes. Puts people in charge of jobs. He still meddles with them, but they have the responsibility and they're told to get on with the job, and they're not capable of it. They're replaced. I think Carlos Ghosn is in that same category. So if you look at some of the companies that are, you know, I think really either in a dominant position today or on the rise, they're run by people who know where they want to go and don't take any prisoners.
Well, thankfully you didn't mention Captain Queeg, Dan Ackerson.
Well, let's be honest here a second. You know, it would be easy to pick on him in terms of being an outsider, but Alan Mulally took that prop away from him. General Motors is, you know, I worked there so many years ago, Peter, I'm not qualified to comment on it, but a number of my friends that I grew up in the industry worked their way up through the ranks, et cetera. And General Motors has some cultural issues that are, I mean, beyond imagination. And he's not the guy to go in there and try and tackle those, I mean, at all. And by the way, I found it interesting listening to you talk about the Tesla, that we're, you know, as a group, we're all proud that it wasn't those geeks in Silicon Valley that made it work, but it was good old Detroit people, you know, who went out there and made it work. And, you know, my immediate thought when you were all saying that was, why weren't those good old people in Detroit able to do that in Detroit?
Yeah, that's a great criticism. Terrific criticism. There's no question about it. You know, the entrepreneurial spirit that's in this place is all little supplier companies. It's not the big ones that are really entrepreneurial and coming up with the really innovative stuff.
Although, to be fair, couldn't we make the argument that the Volt is a representation of Detroit showing that it can do it?
Yeah, absolutely. The Volt is a measure of the true believers within GM who over the years have kept the company in the game through the various management shifts and philosophical changes. And yeah, I think the Volt's...
But not being a clean sheet like Model S, it doesn't have quite the same impact that the Model S does. You know, you're working with Cruise architecture and doing what you can to keep it 40 grand instead of, I'll make $100,000, well, 50 if you get the cheap battery, but...
Right, well, but I mean, but part of the genius or magic behind something about the Volt is the fact that this car is developed to sell in mass quantities versus something that is, made to be in small quantities.
And they also,
So maybe it's not an apples to apples.
We'll see how
comparison,
those
but
quantities work out over time.
Right, but I mean,
John, don't you think this is somewhat of a brand issue? I mean, the Volt, unfortunately, suffered from the curse of General Motors. Too many people for such low expectation for the company. Even to this day, in combination, you got all that other stuff. I don't think that.
Charlie, we're not getting you. Your audio's breaking up there.
we have technical issues. You sound like an alien.
the master controller.
Yeah. Try it again.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
It's breaking up.
Yeah, it's breaking up.
Charlie.
I think part of what he was saying was
Well,
that
I
General
think-
Motors is suffering, or Volt is suffering because it's General Motors.
Yeah, I mean, the team that developed the Volt, don't forget, did it when they were in bankruptcy for the most part. And yeah, I think it's difficult for the Volt to overcome. I think it's a cool name. I think, if they had done a expensive one like the new Cadillac,
ELR.
the ELR, that's an interesting experiment because now the touchy-feely hordes in Hollywood and Northern California can't say, oh, it's just this pedestrian Chevy. Oh, it's actually a really nice-looking car. So
The top flight interior and the whole shebang.
yeah, so it's up to Cadillac marketing to make an impression on these people who are initially will write off General Motors every time because, oh, it's old Detroit. You can't really say that when you see the ELR. I mean, it's really well done, and the interior is gorgeous. But if it doesn't sell, then, boy, I don't know. Detroit will just keep selling to the Midwest.
Look, I don't think it is going to sell. I think it'll sell about as well as all the other electric cars are selling, which is to say, not enough to get a return on all the money that was invested to build it in the first place. I just don't think we've turned that corner.
Charlie?
John, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, I can't see you guys, but I know how handsome you are. I
something wrong with the screen?
I think that, Peter, you're right, that the true believers have kept General Motors going. I just don't think that you can play in the major leagues with just that going for you. And there is so much confusion if you stand outside General Motors in terms of who's in charge. John, you and I are talking about how Detroit press conferences are a truth serum. But who in the hell was in charge of anything when each General Motors press conference, another 2 or 3 people got pulled out for their moment in the sun, and each with a more baffling title. Vice President in charge of global salvation and paper clips. I mean, I got to the point where, and I think I know most of the players pretty well, where I just said, I give up. I mean, and that's, by the way, where I think Marchione has a clear advantage over General Motors, which is you working in the industry, you know who's in charge of Jeep. You know who's in charge of all the different groups. And if you want to talk to them about it, you can go do that. Who in the world do you talk to about General Motors if you want to talk about Chevrolet? And I'm sorry to say this, but having Mark Royce trotted out there all the time, I think just adds to the confusion.
Well, there's Bob Verkesen, who's been anointed by Dan Eckerson to run Cadillac with no apparent qualifications whatsoever other than the fact of being chief lobbyist for General Motors.
Let me back up a second, Peter. I mean a credible person, a credible person in charge. I mean, I think one of the reasons why Chrysler is moving so fast, for a while the Ford was the darling of everybody, but standing outside of Detroit, I have to tell you, I really do believe that what's going on with Chrysler is remarkable. I mean, they sat there and decided that their cars were just totally uncompetitive and started redoing them. And in the press says 16 months, who knows how long, but I mean, they marched and stole thunder from people and actually brought out some decent cars. And in terms of marketing, if you look like imported from Detroit and you like their commercials in the Superbowl, for instance, they have mojo now. They have energy. They have a tailwind.
Well, they're the two product groups that are doing it for them. It's Jeep and the trucks. The new Dart isn't doing very well, and it's always been Jeeps and trucks for Chrysler when they make money. So, but now it's different because those Jeeps and trucks are trying to prop up the whole global Fiat Chrysler enterprise. So.
But Charlie makes a good point.
I think, Peter, you're looking at it as an insider, though. I think the whole Chrysler group of products in the United States, anyway, and I don't disagree with you about what Fiat's going to end up doing with this partnership, but they're building up momentum in some pretty interesting ways. So, in any event, I know that there's a loyal group of people who love General Motors and would like to see it succeed, but I'm not feeling particularly good about it right now.
So, Charlie, we talk a lot on this show about advertising and taglines that go with it. My question to you is, does a tagline really make any difference at all?
My answer, John, is yes and no. I think, as you and I discussed the other day, I had worked with Roy Grace, who was one of the great ad directors in advertising and was part of some of the very early Beetle advertising, in which they had no tagline. We had no tagline at Land Rover, and he was a staunch opponent to it. He said the advertising needs to have the same tone of voice, same look, same feel, same message, but you don't necessarily need a tagline. However, we know in our own experience in the car business, there are taglines that have, worked brilliantly. I mean, one I'll point out because I think it was so good at the beginning and so bad now is when Toyota brought out Lexus. If you'll recall, or at least Peter, I know you will, they had three commercials. One was with the champagne glasses on the hood. One was Timpani with the sound deadening, and I forget what the other one was. But their tagline was the relentless pursuit of perfection, and I think that actually gave them some props to say that. Unfortunately, they, as we all know, every generation has to put its own stamp on something, and sometimes it improves it, and sometimes it doesn't. But for Lexus to say now that their tagline is the pursuit of perfection, it's the biggest nothing burger in the world. I mean, what would the alternative be? The pursuit of mediocrity? They've taken all of the emotion out of it. As I mentioned before, I think Imported from Detroit changed instantly in one commercial a lot of people's thinking about Chrysler products and what was going on there. One of the lines I liked that I was involved with at Porsche was "Nothing even comes close," which I thought actually pretty well summarized who they were at a time when they were trying to sell 924s and 928s unsuccessfully. So sometimes I think it works. I think this whole, the crop of taglines, that whether it's Toyota's "Let's Go Places" or the new Chevrolet one, I don't think they help at all. I don't even know what they are. I don't know what they mean.
Well, like I pointed out with the Chevrolet one, I mean, this is a brand that has benefited from some of the greatest ad campaigns in automotive history. See the USA in your Chevrolet, baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. Not one of my favorites, but it resonated. And, of course, Heartbeat of America. And now, Find New Roads, it's like, well, we've given up on inspiring you to do anything. Just go do what you do. I mean, there's just nothing to it. And, I've watched everything they put out for it, and it's just not, it's just so beneath what it should have been. I don't know what to say about it other than that.
So, Charlie,
just to build on what you're saying, Peter, though, I think one of the great lines of all time was "Like a Rock." And, the business is so complex that I think it's perfectly permissible to have a line for your truck lineup when that represents most of your profit and a huge part of your volume. If somebody put me in charge of General Motors tomorrow, which is, as we both know, highly unlikely, but I would hunt down the person who decided to get rid of that. The odds are they're not with the company anymore.
No, but they aren't. I know who did it, but
that person should be in the advertising hall of shame.
Yeah, don't be surprised. What does GM have on the dock that's so important, critical to them? The new pickup trucks. Advertising is going to start in September. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they brought back Like a Rock, because that really resonated, and it's so easy to do great advertising to that theme. Don't be surprised if it shows up again.
Bring back
I
Bob
would give that a standing ovation.
Yeah.
Charlie, what you're saying is if you're going to have a tagline, you got to have passion in it. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, I think that the best taglines come from people who have a pretty strong vision for what they're trying to do, and they do have a passion. And again, contrast the relentless pursuit of perfection versus the pursuit of perfection. I mean, it's at one moment in time, I think they had that passion. Right now, it's a business.
Well, Mercedes had one of the great taglines of all time, engineered like no other car in the world. And, I think in a lot of people's mind, those cars were just a cut above everything else. And then, Charlie, you remember this, I've written about it extensively. They decided, well, that might be too off-putting. We need to become a more approachable brand, because engineered like no other car in the world, it's just kind of like, wow, you're not good enough to drive one of these Mercedes-Benzes. So they wanted more volume, so they decided to make it more approachable. And guess what? They've careened around for the last 10 years. Yeah, they're selling a lot of cars, but their brand image sucks. And what have they done now? They've tried to recapture engineered like no other car in the world with the best or nothing. Which
they worse than that, they didn't even protect the legal rights of that.
I know, and Gottlieb Daimler,
which was just insane. But the other thing is, look, Mercedes-Benz has classically gotten too arrogant and made incredible mistakes. They watch their competitor buy Rolls-Royce. They are, at that moment in time in the car business, with the S-Class, hands down the leader in the finest luxury car being sold. Period. It was. At that time, there wasn't anything that compared to an S-Class car. So what do? They bring out a Maybach. Who can, most of my German friends can't even remember what a Maybach was or what it should have been. And they downgrade their own leading car. I mean,
yeah, they immediately told all their S-Class owners that, oh, no, this one's better. You schmoes out there just bought you're driving a second-tier car. It was just unbelievably ridiculous.
Well, let me throw one more brick, which is having been the head of Porsche in the United States for a couple of years, when Porsche decided to run the ad saying, and don't forget, you can go to the grocery store and one of these things too. That to me was when somebody has just lost their mind.
It was a monumental mistake. It was the whole thing you can enjoy for every day, and it deteriorated the image. I mean, what are you doing? I agree with you, Charlie. It's like, what are you doing?
Well, you're commonizing your own brand. I mean, I've been watching your discussion of Corvette as a brand, and I'm sort of a two-handed economist on that one. But the advantage of doing that was that you could be a specialty car company. The problem is, because everybody wants to sell more cars, as we go from generation to generation, we try and dilute our own image so we can appeal to more people. It's kind of a ridiculous. I mean, the whole world envies Porsche, and now we're going to tell people you can go to the grocery store and one. Jeez, that's genius that you don't find on every street corner.
So we got a rapid fire, John?
Yeah. Hey, Charlie, stick around. We're going to go to rapid fire and get questions from the audience. So, Ben, let it rip.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you.
Just blew up.
Okay, Glenn E. asks, we were talking about the Cadillac ELR. He wants to know, has any price been announced?
No.
60 grand?
Yeah.
I would say.
It's in the neighborhood of 60.
To start, and there'll be some options.
Yeah.
I think it'll be 70 to the swells out in Hollywood who want to get one.
Scott in Cleveland wants to know, any idea when the Volt is due for a restyle?
No, the Volt 2.0 is the ELR, and technically, but I have not heard of a Volt restyle.
How long has it been out? Because typically a car gets some sort of refresh after 4 years. I don't think it's been out 4 years yet, has it?
Yeah, it was 3 years ago was our car of the year.
Okay, Scott in Cleveland, about another year away, probably.
John, on that,
Yeah.
Because when companies get into trouble, they start trotting out cars way ahead of time. And General Motors did the Volta and the Camaro. Both of those cars seem very old because they've been in the public domain about 2 or 3 years before they were ever on market. I think it's a mistake for companies to do that, by the way.
Yeah, that's an excellent
And
point.
Marchione doesn't go for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, they showed the Camaro in Detroit. It was a great preview, and then they showed it, and they showed it, and they showed it, and they showed it. Then they brought it out, and it's the same thing about my philosophy with Super Bowl advertising. Everyone says, "Oh, we got to do the touchy-feely social media stuff. We have to engage. We have to get the customer feedback. We have to involve them." But which ads had the most impact in the Super Bowl? The ones that were shown on the game for the first time. All this other stuff, I don't believe in at all. I don't think it adds anything.
Peter, I agree with you. How many comedians start off with a punchline?
Exactly. What?
I was saying GM had all kinds of experience with showing things way early with the HHR and the SSR. Remember those?
Yeah.
Well, those
Traverse City, they'd roll them out. Here it is. We're going to do this quickly. Next year, here it is. We're going to do this really quickly.
Well, those were the days when Detroit was just aching for some sort of credibility. So they'd bring out cool concepts, not really having a plan to bring them to market. Yeah.
D. Sproul wants to know, did the Volt contribute to GM's demise, and will they ever recoup the investment? No, it did not contribute to GM's demise. That had started decades before anyone even thought of doing the Volt.
Right.
And no, it did not. In fact, if anything, the Volt helped GM pull out of that demise after the bankruptcy. And will they ever recoup the investment? Ever is a long time.
Well, I think it's inevitable that it will, though. I mean, if we get the 2025 CAFE fuel regulations, all of the learnings that General Motors is getting, we can go way back to the original EV1.
How creative is your accounting on the payback? If you lessons learned and so forth.
Let's just put it this way: in a typical car, it's $1 billion investment for a clean sheet car. Typically, it's about $1 billion. Most companies investing that need to sell about 250,000 cars a year to recoup that investment over the life of that design. It ain't never going to happen with the Volt. It ain't never going to happen with the Leaf. It's probably not going to happen with the Tesla S. It's not going to happen with the Coda. I mean, so on and so forth. And that's, when I say that electric cars are a failure, that's what I mean, is that now these companies have got to go back to their board of directors and say, hey, I need another $1 billion to do the next electric. And the board's going to say, well, we lost all the money that we invested in the first generation. How much money are we going to make on this next $1 billion? And they're going to have to tell them, we're not making any money on it.
Except if they say, oh, by the way, if we don't do that, we're not selling cars in California.
Would you miss it?
Well, I'm just
yeah,
saying.
they would. They would.
That becomes a problem.
Yeah, but California's had to back off its EV mandate twice
over and over
already.
Yeah.
Twice already. After companies flushed, I don't know how much money down the drain to meet their dream of having everybody drive electric. That's my issue with these mandates that say, you stupid car companies, you don't know what you're doing, we know better. Here's what you have to make.
Well, that's the government mentality. That's Northern California politicians, Washington politicians. They all want to tell us how to better our lives.
Well, but even in Europe, though, I mean, the EU with the CO2 regulations that are going to be in place in 2020, I mean, BMW isn't making, electric vehicles because they think it's a real joy to do it. They're
clamoring public, yeah.
No, you're right. They're doing it because of government mandate.
Right. And they see no other way around it.
No, I agree totally. They have no other way around it. But it could be a big mess because you can force the car companies to build those cars. You cannot force the public to buy them. Mm-hmm. And that's where the disconnect is.
Will not, because you could put gas taxes and so forth that would make them do it. But we will not do that.
Well, we've tried the first method, which is bribery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even with huge incentives on these cars. And in fact, they want to increase the incentives on the cars so that people who already have a lot of money can buy their toy for less money.
Although I'm betting with $4 gas that we have out there right now, Volt sales are going up.
Yeah, no, I'll bet they do go up. But I come back to the point, Gary, that they're selling, what, not even $3,000 a month. And I'm saying they've got to sell probably around $24,000 a month to be able to recoup the investment they've made on the car. That's what I'm saying. So I just don't see it happening. But we'll see. Okay, let's go. Admiral Akbar is asking, when will electric cars really catch on?
I think we answered.
I think we answered
10 years
that
before
one.
the hydrogen economy kicks in.
Right.
Okay, Frank, I'll throw this one at you. Why did Volkswagen do a gasoline hybrid and not a diesel hybrid?
Well, obviously, diesel and hybrid tend to cost about the same. So you do a diesel hybrid, it's twice as much as one or the other. So, yeah, it's too expensive.
Danny Boy in Cleveland says, Mr. V, when does the embargo come off the new Dodge 3-liter V6 diesel? You said
Sunday night.
Sunday night. He says, I can tell you that Gale Banks Engineering was very involved with it. And when talking to one unnamed engineer, he was very impressed with the engine's ability to be pushed to the 350 to 400 horsepower range.
He knows nothing.
He knows nothing.
Am I here?
Mitch W., Charlie, this goes to you. He says, in his excellent book, Branding Iron, Charlie Hughes wrote about how they created a world around the car. Can he comment about current efforts to appeal to luxury buyers through concierge programs?
Boy, it sounds like this came from my uncle. I think that one of the problems we have in the car business is that we tend to move as a herd. And so I think that there are a lot of generic things that you can do that luxury customers expect. The issue is, how is that going to separate you one from another? And I'd say right now it's probably very difficult to differentiate yourself, because a lot of the things we're talking about with concierge service are generic. And then it's up to how good is the dealer in many cases to execute some of that. So I think you're going to continue to see a lot of efforts. Whether it pays off, it almost sounds more like a defensive measure to me than an offensive.
Okay, Right Knight wants to know, why doesn't Land Rover and Range Rover become two truly distinct brands? Land Rover being the more affordable and crossover one, Range Rover being the more premium and SUV one.
Yeah, I mean, people used to say to me, if you're such a good brand expert, why can't you explain what happened with Land Rover and Range Rover? But the history in 1970, when they brought out Range Rover, it originally had Land Rover badges on it and all that other stuff. And people had such a fixed image on what a Land Rover was, it didn't sell. So 6 months later, they stripped every badge off of it and separated them out, and then said, we'll always sell them as a separate brand. It was when Wolfgang Reitzler came on board, and they hired me a consultant. He and I had a discussion, and we agreed that Range Rover actually was a brand and could have more than one model. The truth is that in most other markets, that separation is more apparent than it is here. Part of that has to do with the fact that they've, over time, sold more what we now call Defenders, but were Land Rovers at the beginning. And also they did a better job with discovery, much aided by diesel motors, et cetera, and being an appealing vehicle in other parts of the world. So here they look very close. They don't look as close in other markets. But it does say that, to me, there is a great opportunity, per his suggestion, to separate out the brands. They're playing with a new Defender and to bring in Land Rovers that are, much lower priced than Range Rovers.
Ryan K. wants to know, Peter, I'll start you off with this one. What is GM doing with GMC? Of all the brands, he says, GMC seems to be the one with the least direction. How about having GMC go after Jeep and Land Rover with a Wrangler fighter and a Range Rover competitor, like with the Yukon Denali?
Well, they had that with Hummer, and they let it go. GMC, the argument is always, why don't they eliminate GMC, because you add them together and they're almost selling as many as F-150. But then during the run-up to the bankruptcy, the government weenies said, well, you got to get rid of GMC. And they said, we make a lot of money on these. So I don't know. GMC lives in this sort of the twilight zone. I mean, when you see a well-turned-out Denali, it seems to make sense. But, you know, it's funny. GM cut their brands down. They still have too many brands because they don't have enough money to...
Wouldn't Granite have been a nice thing to throw into those showrooms, though?
Yeah, Granite. But, you know, I still get excited when I think about what the Hummer H4 concept looked like. If they had brought that out...
That was Wrangler,
you know,
wasn't it?
yeah, Hummer, you know, had Jeep by the throat. They did. They just usurped Jeep's position completely. And if they had brought that H4 out with the turbo diesel and an affordable price range, I mean, you know, Jeep wouldn't be singing the happy song right now.
Peter, I think also part of it was when they were cutting brands out and they decided that because of the importance of Buick in China that they had to keep it here. Keeping GMC became a much easier decision because if you're going to support a dealer body, you need both a car and a truck. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to believe that there was some pragmatic thinking that went on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of dual Buick GMC dealerships.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, so GMC's not going anywhere.
Yeah, you know, they've been using this professional grade tagline. I'm not sure that the public's caught on to what they mean by that.
That sucks. It always has sucked. They need to jettison that. I want to be the brand leader for the new Pontiac Hummer division of General Motors.
Okay, here's one last one, and I'm going to throw it to you guys. I'll start with you, Gary. This comes from Ken Newton. He says, I own a Fiat 500 Pop. It's been about a week. It's okay, other than the response I get on the road from others. He says, my question is, what is it about the American driver requiring such an aggressive attitude towards a small car? It's embarrassing to me as one just trying to keep the cost low, the mileage high, without using any lithium.
I find it very interesting that he's owned the car for a week and he says it's okay. I mean, aren't you supposed to buy a car in like for a year, be really happy about it and say, wow, I really got a great car and feel very excited about it? So, you know, I'm a little mystified by that, and
Should have popped for the Sport.
maybe that would be the difference. But I mean,
I don't know.
I mean,
No, but I know where he's coming from. I've driven things like the Fiat 500 and other small cars, and there are some drivers out there who, I don't know, they just don't take a liking to people driving small cars. They get very aggressive around you. Very aggressive. I know exactly what this guy's talking about.
I had a Scion IQ and was driving that, which, you know, the 500 looks like a Maybach compared to it, I mean, in terms of the size. And, I mean, I drove to west of Jackson and back on 94 with the thing, and I had no trouble even with the semi-drivers. I mean, it was, I don't know if you...
Brave man.
I don't know if he has ever owned a small car before, or, you know, that might play into
That might play into it, too, because if you're not used to small cars, everything looks intimidating.
Oh, yeah.
John,
Yeah.
when we started, and I think it was Frank who said he's owned it for a week and he's already complaining. One of the great thrills of working with the Germans was that they could not figure out Americans. They said, you are the only people in the world when you buy something which should be some sort of merit badge for you or some sort of market distinction for being a smart consumer. If you don't like it, you trash it immediately. In Germany, if somebody buys the car, they'd rather die than admit that they made a mistake. And they're right. It's one of the things in this market. People are very candid about what their experience is.
Yeah, they are. Well, hey, it's time to wrap the show up. But Charlie?
We had a call. And
Oh, we did?
A couple other questions. Do you want to take the call?
May as well take the call if somebody took the time to call in. Sure, go ahead.
Hi, this is Louie from Buffalo. I was wondering, do you think the Chevy SS should be called the SS at all? Or should it be called something different like Chevelle? Thanks for taking my question. Bye.
Oh, interesting question.
I had some reader feedback this week about that they thought it should be called the Impala SS, or I don't know. I don't have any.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
I'm all for let's have names for cars, and SS is right on the raggedy edge of not being a name, just being a couple of letters. So I would say, yeah, Chevelle SS might have been cooler. Although Chevelle was always, there was something bigger than a Chevelle, and that's the biggest thing, so that's probably wouldn't be
If
the
anything, it should have been the Impala if they're going to hang a name on it. But the important thing is you can, an American manufacturer has brought another rear-wheel drive 400-plus horsepower car to this market, which is a good thing. A lot of my readers say, oh, it should have been a manual, and yeah, you can
Big
say...
giant cars with manuals feel kind of weird.
Yeah, you can say it should have been a manual, but believe me, they'd sell about 50 of them, or maybe 200 of them nationally. So they made the right call.
They wouldn't have amortized this certification.
No.
Yeah, they could.
That's right.
So I'm glad they brought the car in.
They couldn't call it Impala because there's a new Impala coming.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think this is what happens when you have the complexity of model lineup they have. But they're also trying to tap into the history of the SS. So, I thought the name was okay. I couldn't have thought where else they might have gone. And certainly you're going to get buyers out there that reflect fondly on, their 1962 Impala SS 409.
Yeah.
Could have spelled out Super Sport. That might have been an idea.
Or bring back Biscayne.
That has a down market feel now.
That's right.
Bel Air.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's wrap it up. Charlie Hughes, thanks so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Charlie.
That's great.
Always a pleasure.
Frank Marcus, great having you. Gary Vaslash, and I'll see you next week.
Yes.
Okay, and thanks, everybody, for having tuned in.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone. Your journey, our passion.